They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But mine? Mine was frozen solid, aged like fine wine and served at exactly the right temperature to burn on the way down. 3 years, that's how long I waited. That's how long I played the role of the oblivious wife, the forgiving sister, the woman too weak to see what was right in front of her face. And every single day of those 3 years, I was building something they never saw coming. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the moment that changed everything, the moment I found them. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays were my late days at the clinic where I worked as a nurse. My shift was supposed to end at 9, but one of our patients had a complication, and by the time I got everything stabilized and documented, it was barely past 7. I texted Marcus, my husband, to let him know I'd be home early. He didn't respond. That should have been my first clue. I drove home through streets slick with October rain, my windshield wipers beating a rhythm that now feels like a countdown. Our house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, a gorgeous craftsman with blue shutters that Marcus and I had saved for years to buy. We'd been married for 5 years at that point. 5 years of what I thought was a solid, if somewhat routine, marriage. The house was dark except for the bedroom window on the second floor. Our bedroom. A warm, amber glow that meant someone was home, probably reading or watching TV. I remember feeling grateful that Marcus was there, that I'd get to curl up next to him and decompress from a stressful shift. I used my key, quiet, the way you do when you don't want to make too much noise. The living room was untouched, no shoes by the door except Marcus's work boots, no coat on the rack. The kitchen was clean, which was unusual because Marcus always left his dinner dishes in the sink for later. And then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A woman's laugh, breathy and intimate, coming from upstairs. From our bedroom. My first thought, and I'm almost embarrassed to admit this, was that Marcus was watching something on his laptop. Some comedy special, maybe. Because the alternative, the thing my brain couldn't quite process yet, was too impossible. I climbed those stairs one at a time. The thick carpet muffled my footsteps. Each step brought the sounds into sharper focus. Not laughter, not a TV show. Voices, 2 of them. One was Marcus's deep baritone saying something I couldn't make out. The other was higher, familiar in a way that made my skin prickle. Our bedroom door was slightly ajar, just an inch, maybe 2, enough to see through. I didn't throw the door open, I didn't scream. I stood there in the hallway, my hand on the door frame, and I looked through that thin slice of space at the scene inside. Marcus, my husband, the man who promised to love and cherish me, who cried when we said our vows, who still kissed me goodbye every morning. He was in our bed, the bed we'd picked out together at that overpriced furniture store with its cream-colored duvet that I'd washed just 3 days before. And beneath him, moving against him, moaning his name like it was a prayer, my sister, Lilith. I want to tell you that time stopped, that the world shattered, but that's not how it happened. Instead, everything went very, very quiet. The sounds they were making seemed to fade into the background, like someone had turned down the volume on reality itself. I felt cold. Not shocked cold or scared cold, just empty cold, like someone had opened a window somewhere inside my chest, and all the warmth had simply walked out. I watched them for what felt like an hour, but was probably 30 seconds. Marcus's back was to me, so he never saw. But Lilith? Lilith's eyes were open, and about 10 seconds before I stepped away, her gaze drifted toward the door. She saw me, I know she did. Her eyes met mine across that darkened room, over her husband's shoulder. And do you know what she did? She smiled. Not a guilty smile, not an apologetic grimace. A slow, satisfied smile that said, I won. I walked back down those stairs like I was underwater. Each movement felt deliberate and strange, like I was piloting my body from somewhere far away. I made it to my car. I don't remember getting there, and I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, rain hammering on the roof, my breath fogging up the windows. And that's when I made the decision not to confront them, not to scream or cry or throw things, not to file for divorce the next morning or call my mother or post about it on social media like a normal person whose life had just imploded. No. I decided to wait. I decided to plan. I decided that if Lilith wanted to smile at me like that, like she'd taken something precious and I was too weak to fight back, then I would show her exactly how wrong she was. But to understand why the revenge I chose was so perfect, you need to understand who Lilith was, who we both were, the history that made her betrayal not just painful, but predictable. We grew up in one of those families that looks perfect from the outside. Big house in the suburbs, 2-car garage, parents who went to church every Sunday and hosted Christmas dinner for 20 people. My mother was a real estate agent, one of the top sellers in our county. My father was a corporate attorney, successful, ambitious, always on. I'm the older sister, by 3 years. And from the moment Lilith was born, with her copper curls and enormous blue eyes, she was the favorite. I don't mean that in a bitter, exaggerated way. I mean it factually. My parents adored her, doted on her. When I brought home straight A's, it was expected. When Lilith brought home B's, it was celebrated because she tried so hard. I was the responsible one, the boring one, the one who babysat Lilith when our parents went out, who helped her with homework, who defended her when kids at school were mean. I loved her fiercely, the way older siblings do, even as I watched her get everything I worked for handed to her on a silver platter. In high school, I was captain of the debate team and editor of the yearbook. Lilith was homecoming queen. I got into a good state university with a partial scholarship. Lilith got into the same university with worse grades, but our parents paid her full tuition without blinking because she deserved to follow her dreams. I became a nurse, practical, stable, helping people. Lilith got a degree in art history and spent 3 years finding herself in Europe on our parents' dime. And then she came home, 26 years old, no job, no prospects, moving back into our parents' house with a suitcase full of watercolor paintings and stories about Italian lovers. My mother threw her a welcome home party. I was engaged to Marcus by then, and I brought him to the party because I wanted my family to get to know him better. Lilith met him that night. She wore a sundress the color of champagne, her hair loose around her shoulders, laughing at everything he said. And I watched Marcus's face do something I'd never seen before. He was dazzled. I noticed it. But I told myself I was being paranoid, insecure. Marcus loved me. We were getting married in 3 months. Lilith was my sister. She would never, except she would. And she did. After the wedding, Lilith started coming around more often. She'd drop by our house unannounced, usually when she knew I was at work. "Just visiting Marcus," she'd say with that innocent smile. "He's so easy to talk to." Marcus never mentioned these visits. I only found out about them because our neighbor, Mrs. Chen, mentioned seeing Lilith's car in our driveway several afternoons a week. "She's helping me with a surprise for you," Marcus said when I asked him about it. "Don't ruin it by being suspicious." So I let it go, because I trusted him, because I love my sister, despite everything, because I couldn't imagine that anyone, especially family, could be that cruel. But on that Tuesday night, standing in the rain outside our house, I realized something. Lilith had been planning this for years. Every visit, every laugh, every time she touched Marcus's arm or complimented him or made herself indispensable, it was all leading to this moment. To her, in my bed, with my husband, smiling at me like she'd won some competition I didn't know we were in. And maybe we were. Maybe we always had been. Maybe in Lilith's mind, I'd had enough. The good grades, the stable career, the reliable personality. She'd been beautiful and charming and everyone's favorite, but I'd had a... what? Contentment? Peace? A loving marriage? Well, not anymore. I sat in that car for 2 hours. The rain eventually stopped, leaving everything glistening and clean under the streetlights. Around 9:30, I saw movement at the front door. Lilith slipping out into the night, her hair still messy, her coat wrapped tight around her. She didn't look toward my car. She just walked to her white Audi, a gift from our parents for her 28th birthday, and drove away. I waited another 10 minutes. Then I went inside. Marcus was in the kitchen, making himself a sandwich. He'd showered, changed into fresh clothes. The bedroom upstairs would be aired out, the sheets probably already in the wash. He'd covered his tracks like he'd done this before, because he had. I understood that now, with a clarity that was almost nauseating. "Hey babe," he said when he saw me, his voice casual, easy. "Thought you'd be later. How was work?" I stood in the doorway, my purse still on my shoulder, my jacket dripping water onto the hardwood floor. I looked at him, really looked at him, and tried to find the man I'd married. The man who'd proposed to me on a beach at sunset, who'd cried during our first dance, who'd held my hand through my father's funeral. He wasn't there, or maybe he'd never been there at all. "Work was fine," I said. My voice sounded normal, steady. "Long but fine." "You must be exhausted," Marcus said, and he actually sounded concerned. He came over and kissed my forehead, and I let him. I felt his lips on my skin, and I didn't pull away. "You should get some rest." "Yeah," he said. "I should." I went upstairs. I brushed my teeth. I changed into pajamas. I got into bed. Our bed, where my husband had been with my sister less than 3 hours before, and I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, my mind absolutely clear. Most people, when they're betrayed like this, they act immediately. They confront, they cry, they throw things and demand explanations and blow up their lives in a spectacular display of justified rage. But I'm not most people. I'm the responsible one, remember? The planner, the one who thinks 10 steps ahead. And as I lay there, listening to Marcus brush his teeth in the bathroom, I began to formulate a plan. The next morning, I went to work like nothing had happened. I smiled at my coworkers, I tended to my patients, I ate lunch in the break room and laughed at someone's story about their kid's soccer game. I was perfectly, completely normal, and when I got home that evening, I was normal with Marcus too. I asked about his day. He was a financial advisor, worked at a mid-sized firm downtown. He told me about a difficult client, and I nodded and made sympathetic noises. We ordered Thai food and watched a documentary about penguins. We went to bed at 10:30. It was also breathtakingly ordinary. On Thursday, Lilith called me. "Want to grab coffee this weekend?" she asked, her voice bright and cheerful. "I feel like we haven't hung out in forever." "Sure," I said. "Saturday morning work for you?" "Perfect." We met at our usual spot, a little cafe downtown with overpriced lattes and rustic wooden tables. Lilith showed up 15 minutes late, wearing a flowing bohemian dress and oversized sunglasses, looking like she'd just stepped out of a fashion magazine. She hugged me, and I hugged her back. "God, I've missed you," she said, settling into her chair with her oat milk cappuccino. "Life has been so crazy lately." "Oh?" I said, stirring my black coffee. "What's been going on?" "Just, trying to figure out what I want to do with my life. Mom keeps pushing me to get a real job." She made air quotes with her fingers. "But I'm not ready to sell my soul to corporate America yet." I watched her talk. She was animated, expressive, completely at ease. There was no guilt in her eyes, no shame in her smile. She looked happy, energized, like she had a secret that made her glow from the inside. She did have a secret. My husband. "You seem different," I said carefully. "Good different. Like something exciting is happening." Her smile widened. "You know me. I'm always chasing the next adventure." We talked for an hour. She told me about a painting class she'd started teaching at the community center. I told her about a difficult patient case. She asked about Marcus. "How's that husband of yours?" And I said he was fine, busy with work. She nodded, her expression sympathetic, like she understood how hard it was to be married to someone with a demanding career. When we parted ways, she hugged me again. "Love you, sis," she said into my ear. "Love you too," I said back. And I meant it. That's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal like this. You can hate someone and love them at the same time. You can want to destroy them and still remember every good moment you shared. The human heart is big enough for all of it. The rage and the grief and the affection. All at once. all tangled up together. But love doesn't mean mercy. Not anymore. The first step of my plan was information. I needed to know everything. How long had this been going on? How often did they see each other? Were they in love, or was this just physical? Did Marcus plan to leave me? Did Lilith actually want him, or was she just taking him because she could? I couldn't just ask. I had to investigate. I started small. I checked Marcus's phone when he was in the shower. He didn't have a password. That's how secure he felt, how certain he was that I'd never suspect. His messages with Lilith went back 8 months. 8 months. They were careful. No explicit photos, nothing that would be damning if someone else saw it. But the subtext was clear, inside jokes, late-night conversations. Him. Can't stop thinking about Tuesday. Her. Me neither, same time next week? I took photos of everything with my own phone. Screenshots, evidence, a digital record of their betrayal. Next, I checked our bank accounts. Marcus had been withdrawing cash regularly. Small amounts. $100 or $200 at a time. Not enough to raise suspicion, but when I added it, he'd taken out nearly $5,000 in the past 8 months. Hotels probably. Nice ones. Knowing Lilith's taste. Maybe gifts, jewelry, lingerie. I opened a separate bank account in my name only. I started transferring money, carefully, gradually, from our joint savings into my private account. Not enough that Marcus would notice, but enough that I'd have a safety net when the time came. I also started documenting everything about our life. I made copies of our mortgage documents, our car titles, our insurance policies. I photographed our belongings, especially the expensive ones. I backed up our financial records. I prepared for war without firing a single shot. And through all of this, I remained the perfect wife. I cooked Marcus's favorite meals. I laughed at his jokes. I initiated sex twice a week, keeping to our normal schedule. I went to his company holiday party and charmed his coworkers. I bought him a cashmere sweater for Christmas and watched him open it with genuine delight. "You're the best," he said, kissing me under the twinkling lights of our Christmas tree. "I'm so lucky to have you." "I'm lucky too," I said, and my smile never wavered. Lilith came to our house for Christmas dinner. Of course she did. Our mother had insisted on hosting, but Lilith volunteered to come by our place first for drinks and appetizers. "A little sister time before the chaos," she'd said. She arrived at 4, wearing a red velvet dress that hugged every curve, her hair styled in perfect waves. She brought a bottle of expensive wine and a gift bag for each of us. "For my favorite couple," she said, handing the bags over. Marcus got a leather wallet. I got a silk scarf. We thanked her, and she settled onto our couch like she owned it, curling her legs underneath her, accepting the gin and tonic Marcus made for her with a smile that said they shared more than just small talk. I sat across from them and watched them try not to look at each other too much. Marcus was obvious. His eyes kept drifting to her, then darting away. But Lilith was better. She'd look at him when she knew I was distracted, when I was in the kitchen grabbing more cheese or refilling the wine, quick glances loaded with meaning. "So?" Lilith said, turning to me. "Mom told me you guys are thinking about having kids soon." I hadn't told my mother that, which meant Marcus had, which meant he'd been talking to my family about our future while actively destroying it. "We've discussed it," I said carefully, "but we're not in a rush." "Well, don't wait too long," Lilith said, her tone playful. "Your biological clock and all that." She was 28, I was 31. 3 years older, and in Lilith's world, that might as well have been 3 decades. She loved reminding me of our age gap, especially when it came to things like this. Subtle little digs wrapped in sisterly concern. "We've got time," Marcus said, reaching over to squeeze my hand, the hand he'd held while sleeping with my sister. "No need to rush into anything." Lilith's smile tightened just slightly, almost imperceptibly. But I saw it, and I understood. She wanted him to leave me. She wanted the affair to become something public, something real. She was getting impatient, waiting for Marcus to make a move, to end our marriage and start something with her. But Marcus, cowardly, indecisive Marcus, was perfectly content to have both of us, the stable, reliable wife at home, and the exciting, beautiful mistress on the side. That's when I realized something important. Marcus wasn't going to leave me, not on his own. He was too comfortable, too risk-averse. He'd keep this double life going as long as possible, maybe forever, until one of us forced his hand. And I knew Lilith. I knew her impatience, her need for validation, her inability to settle for being second best at anything. She'd eventually push him to make a choice, but I'd be ready long before that moment came. By March, I had everything I needed: bank records, phone records, a lawyer consulted in secret, a shark of a divorce attorney named Patricia Mohan, who'd made a name for herself destroying cheating spouses in court. I didn't hire her, not yet, but I met with her, got advice, learned what I'd need to protect myself. Document everything, Patricia had said, her sharp eyes assessing me across her sleek glass desk. And whatever you do, don't tip your hand. The moment he knows you know, he'll start hiding assets. I also befriended a private investigator. His name was Glenn, a former police detective who'd gone private after retiring. I hired him for what I called a security consultation for our home. But really, I was learning how to track someone, how to gather evidence, how to build an airtight case. Glenn was the one who suggested the cameras. Tiny things, he said, showing me devices no bigger than a button. Put them in common areas, living room, kitchen. You're not trying to catch them in bed. You already know about that. You're documenting the relationship, the comfort level, the intimacy. I installed 3 cameras, one in the living room, hidden in a decorative bookshelf, one in the kitchen, tucked behind a coffee maker, one in the home office, where Marcus kept his computer and important documents. The first time I watched footage of them together, Marcus letting Lilith into the house on a Wednesday afternoon while I was at work. The two of them kissing in our hallway, her hands in his hair, his hands on her waist. I had to pause the video and walk away. Not because it hurt. I was past hurt by then, but because I needed to stay analytical, detached. Emotion would ruin everything. I saved the footage, backed it up in 3 separate places, and I kept collecting. April brought my birthday. 32? Marcus took me to an expensive restaurant downtown, the kind with white tablecloths and a sommelier. He gave me a diamond bracelet. To my beautiful wife, he said, fastening it around my wrist, "Here's to many more years together." I wore the bracelet. I thanked him. I let him make love to me that night, and I made all the appropriate sounds. And afterward, when he was asleep, I lay awake and thought about how strange it was that I could go through these motions so perfectly when everything inside me had calcified into something cold and hard and focused. Lilith texted me the next morning. "Happy belated birthday. Sorry, I forgot. Let me take you to lunch to make up for it." She'd never forgotten my birthday before, but she'd been distracted lately, busy. I wondered if she and Marcus had been together yesterday, if she'd been too wrapped up in him to remember. We met for lunch at a trendy bistro she loved. She was quieter than usual, more subdued. Halfway through our meal, she said, "Can I ask you something? And you have to be honest." My heart rate didn't change. My expression stayed open, curious. "Of course." "Do you ever feel like you settled? Like maybe you married Marcus because he was safe, but not because he was, I don't know, your passion?" I set down my fork carefully. "What makes you ask that?" She shrugged, trying to look casual. "I've just been thinking a lot about love lately. What it means, whether the stable, comfortable kind is better or worse than the wild, can't live without you kind." She was fishing, trying to figure out if my marriage was weak enough that she could justify what she was doing. Looking for permission maybe, or at least for evidence that I didn't really love Marcus anyway. So her betrayal was somehow less cruel. "Marcus and I have a good marriage," I said. "It's not perfect. No marriage is. But we're partners. We're building a life together. That matters more than passion, I think. Passion fades. Partnership lasts." Something flickered across Lilith's face. Disappointment, maybe, or frustration. "Right," she said. "That makes sense." But I could see it in her eyes. She didn't want it to make sense. She wanted me to confess that I was unhappy, that my marriage was a sham, that she was doing me a favor by stealing my husband. She wanted absolution. She wasn't going to get it. By June, the affair had been going on for over a year. I'd collected enough evidence to sink an aircraft carrier. Videos, texts, bank statements, witness testimony from neighbors who'd seen Lilith coming and going from our house. I had dates, times, locations. I had a lawyer ready to file. I had a new apartment already lined up. A beautiful one-bedroom in the city, lease signed, first and last month's rent paid from my secret account. I could have ended it then. Filed for divorce, ruined them both, walked away clean. But that wasn't the revenge I wanted. See, a quick divorce would have been too easy. Marcus would have paid alimony, sure. I'd get half our assets, maybe more given his infidelity. But he'd move on. He'd end up with Lilith, probably. And they'd frame themselves as star-crossed lovers who'd finally found each other. My family would be sympathetic to me, but they'd eventually accept them as a couple. Time heals all wounds, people would say. At least everyone's happy now. No. I didn't want a clean break. I wanted destruction. I wanted them to suffer the way I'd suffered. I wanted everyone who knew us to see exactly who they were, and I knew exactly how to do it. My parents' 40th wedding anniversary was in September. They were planning a huge party, a black tie event at the country club where they'd gotten married, with 200 guests, a live band, an open bar, the works. They'd been planning it for over a year, and it was all my mother could talk about. "It's going to be magical," she'd said to me over lunch in July. "The perfect celebration of lasting love." Lilith was supposed to give a speech. So was I. The two daughters toasting their parents' incredible marriage, their endearing partnership, their example of what love should be. It was perfect. Absolutely perfect. I started planning the details. Not just what I'd say, but how I'd say it. The timing, the presentation. I wanted it to be devastating, but I also wanted it to be undeniable. No room for excuses or explanations or "it's not what it looks like." I needed one more piece of evidence, something irrefutable. In August, I told Marcus I had to go to a nursing conference in Chicago, 3 days, Wednesday through Friday. It was a real conference. I'd registered for it, even had my name badge printed. But I didn't go. Instead, I checked into a hotel 3 miles from our house, and I waited. Glenn, my private investigator friend, had helped me set up additional cameras. These ones hidden in our bedroom. I'd installed them the week before, when Marcus was at work. Tiny things, completely invisible, unless you knew where to look. I'd also made a copy of our house key and given it to Glenn. "If they're in there for more than an hour," I told him, "I want you to go in, quiet, quick, take photos, video if you can, but don't let them see you." On Wednesday night, I watched from my hotel room as Marcus texted Lilith. "She's gone until Friday. Come over." Lilith responded immediately. "I'll bring wine." I watched on my laptop, the cameras streamed to an app on my phone and computer, as Lilith arrived at 7:30. She let herself in with her own key. Marcus must have given her one months ago. They didn't even make it upstairs at first. They were on the couch kissing, her dress already half off, his hands everywhere. I watched with clinical detachment, taking notes, timestamps, positions, the bottle of wine they opened, a $200 Burgundy from our wine fridge, one Marcus and I had been saving for our anniversary. Around 9, they moved to the bedroom, our bedroom, and that's when Glenn arrived. He was a professional, silent, efficient. He entered through the back, door I'd left unlocked, made his way upstairs, and photographed them through the cracked bedroom door. High-resolution images, perfect clarity. Marcus's face, Lilith's face, both of them identifiable beyond any doubt. When Glenn sent me the photos at 9:45, I looked at them once, saved them, and then closed my laptop. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I poured myself a glass of wine from the hotel minibar, and I sat by the window, looking out at the city lights, and I felt something close to peace. I had everything I needed. Now I just had to wait for September. The next 6 weeks were the longest of my life. Not because I was nervous, I wasn't, but because I had to maintain the charade for just a little longer, and the effort of it was exhausting in a way that the previous year hadn't been. I came home from my conference, and Marcus greeted me with flowers and takeout from my favorite Thai place. "I missed you," he said, and I believed that he believed it. That's the thing about people like Marcus. They're not sociopaths. They genuinely think they can love two people at once. that their feelings are somehow justification for their actions. I missed you too, I said, accepting his kiss, smelling my sister's perfume still lingering on his skin, even though he'd showered. Lilith texted me that weekend. Lunch? Feel like I haven't seen you in forever. We met at a cafe, and she was glowing, radiant. She looked like a woman in love, and maybe she was, or maybe she just looked like a woman who thought she was winning. You seem happy, I said, watching her over the rim of my coffee cup. I am, she said, and for a moment something flickered in her expression, something almost guilty. I feel like things are finally falling into place, you know? Like I'm becoming the person I'm supposed to be. That's great, I said. I'm happy for you. And the mask slipped, just for a second. She looked at me with something that might have been pity or might have been triumph, and she said, Thanks. I hope someday you find what makes you feel this way too. She thought I didn't have it. She thought my life was small and sad and that she was doing better than me because she had stolen my husband. The delusion was almost impressive. I'm working on it, I told her, and my smile was genuine because I knew something she didn't. I was about to become exactly the person I was supposed to be too. My mother called me in early September to discuss the anniversary party details. I need to finalize the seating chart, she said, and I want to make sure you and Lilith are both comfortable with your speeches. You're going first, then Lilith. Perfect, I said. I've been working on mine. I think it's going to be really special. I'm sure it will be, honey. You've always been so good with words. The compliment stung, not because it wasn't true, but because I knew what my mother meant by it. Good with words, reliable, the dependable daughter who could be counted on to do things right. Not the exciting one, not the beautiful one, just the good one. Well, she was about to see just how good I could be. I spent hours crafting my speech. Every word was chosen with surgical precision. I rehearsed it in front of my bathroom mirror, timing each pause, each inflection. I wanted it to start sweet, nostalgic, warm, the kind of speech everyone expected from me. And then I wanted it to twist, like a knife slipping between ribs, so smoothly that by the time people realized what was happening, it would be too late to stop it. I also prepared a multimedia presentation. My mother had rented an audio-visual setup for the party, a projector and screen for showing old family photos and videos. She'd asked me to put together a slideshow of my parents' life together, and I'd agreed enthusiastically. I did make that slideshow. 45 beautiful photos of my parents over the years, set to their favorite song. It was sentimental and lovely and would have made everyone cry happy tears. But I also made a second slideshow, one that would come after my speech, one that no one was expecting. The week before the party, I had lunch with Patricia, my divorce lawyer. We met at her office, and I brought everything. Printed copies of texts, bank statements, photos, video stills, witness statements, the works. I laid it all out on her conference table like evidence in a trial. Patricia went through it methodically, her expression never changing. When she finished, she looked up at me and said, This is airtight. With this evidence, you'll get everything. The house, majority of assets, significant alimony. He doesn't have a leg to stand on. Good, I said. I want the papers drawn up but not filed yet. I'll tell you when. When's the party? Saturday night. Patricia raised an eyebrow. You're going to serve him at your parents' anniversary party? No, I said. I'm going to do something better, and then I'm going to serve him on Sunday morning. She studied me for a long moment, and then a small, sharp smile crossed her face. Remind me never to cheat on my spouse. Good advice, I said. The night before the party, I couldn't sleep. Not from nerves, but from anticipation. Everything was ready. The speech was memorized. The slideshow was loaded onto a USB drive in my purse. The divorce papers were ready to be filed first thing Monday morning. My apartment was furnished and waiting. My bank account was secure. My exit strategy was flawless. I lay in bed next to Marcus, listening to him breathe, and I felt nothing. Not hatred, not love, not even satisfaction yet. Just a cool, calm certainty that tomorrow everything would change. Marcus stirred, rolling over to face me. You okay? He mumbled, half asleep. You're so still." "Just thinking about the party," I said. "Want it to be perfect for my parents?" "It will be hin," he said, and he kissed my forehead before drifting back to sleep. I wondered if he'd spent the previous nights like this with Lilith, if she was nervous too, preparing her own speech, thinking about how she'd stand up in front of 200 people and toast our parents' marriage while sleeping with her sister's husband. I wondered if the irony occurred to her, or if she was so deep in her own delusion that she couldn't see it. I guess I'd find out soon enough. Saturday arrived with perfect September weather. Crisp and clear, the kind of day that felt like a blessing. I spent the morning at a spa, my mother's treat for me and Lilith, a girls' day before the big event. We got massages, facials, our hair and makeup done. Lilith chattered the entire time, excited and nervous about her speech. "I'm going to talk about what they've taught us about love," she said as a stylist curled her hair. "About commitment and partnership and staying together through hard times." "That sounds perfect," I said, my own hair being pinned into an elegant updo. Very heartfelt. "What's yours about?" "Family," I said. "And truth. And how important it is to really see the people you love." "Deep," Lilith said, and she squeezed my hand. "We're lucky to have parents like them, huh? A real example of what marriage should be." "We really are," I agreed. In the mirror, I caught my own eyes and saw someone I almost didn't recognize. Still calm, still focused. The woman looking back at me had waited over a year for this moment. She'd been patient and careful and perfect, and tonight she was going to burn it all down. The country club looked like something out of a fairy tale. White lights strung through the trees, lanterns lining the walkway to the ballroom, flowers everywhere, roses and hydrangeas in my mother's favorite colors, cream and blush pink. The ballroom itself was stunning, round tables with silk linens, crystal chandeliers, a parquet dance floor that gleamed under the lights. 200 guests arrived in their finest attire. Extended family, old friends, business associates, neighbors we'd known for decades. Everyone who mattered to my parents was there, dressed in suits and gowns, ready to celebrate 40 years of marriage. I wore a navy blue dress, elegant but understated, conservative, the kind of thing the responsible daughter would wear. Lilith wore emerald green silk that hugged her like a second skin, her hair flowing loose, her makeup dramatic. She looked like she was the one getting celebrated tonight. Marcus wore the suit I'd picked out for him 3 months ago, before I knew what I knew, when I still thought we'd be attending this party as a happy couple. He kept his hand on my lower back as we mingled, playing the role of the devoted husband, and I let him, smiling and chatting with relatives, accepting compliments on my dress, on my hair, on what a lovely couple Marcus and I made. My parents stood at the entrance, greeting guests, my mother resplendent in a champagne-colored gown, my father distinguished in his tuxedo. They looked happy, genuinely, deeply happy. 40 years together, and they still held hands like newlyweds. When I hugged them, my mother whispered in my ear, "Thank you for being here, sweetheart. Thank you for everything." "Wouldn't miss it," I whispered back. Dinner was served at 7, a 5-course meal, each dish more elaborate than the last. I sat at the family table, my parents at the center, me and Marcus on one side, Lilith on the other. Lilith kept looking at Marcus across the table, these quick little glances that she thought were subtle. Marcus kept his eyes on his plate, or on me, playing it safe. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, making small talk with my aunt, laughing at my uncle's terrible jokes. The room buzzed with conversation and clinking glasses and the gentle music of the string quartet in the corner. At 8:30, the toast began. My father went first, standing at the microphone that had been set up near the head table. He was a good speaker. Years of courtroom experience had made him confident and polished. He talked about meeting my mother at law school, about their first date, about the moment he knew she was the one. It was sweet and funny and romantic, and people laughed and sighed in all the right places. Then my mother spoke. She was more emotional, her voice catching as she talked about building a life together, raising 2 daughters, weathering storms and celebrating victories. She looked at me and Lilith as she spoke, her eyes shining with tears. "My girl," she said, "you two are the best thing we ever created together." The room applauded. Lilith wiped her eyes. I smiled, and then it was my turn. I stood and smoothed my dress, my heart rate steady, my hands dry. I'd been preparing for this moment for over a year, but in that second, walking to the microphone, it felt like I'd been preparing my whole life. The room quieted. 200 faces turned toward me, expectant and warm. I saw relatives who'd watched me grow up, family friends who'd been at my high school graduation, my wedding. I saw Marcus looking proud. I saw Lilith looking supportive but slightly impatient because she wanted her turn. I saw my parents holding hands, smiling at me with so much love and pride that something inside my chest almost cracked. But I didn't let it. Not yet. "Good evening, everyone," I said, my voice clear and strong. For those who don't know me, I'm Sarah, the older daughter. And like my mom said, tonight is about celebrating 40 years of love and commitment, 40 years of two people choosing each other every single day through good times and bad. People nodded. Someone said, "Hear, hear." My parents taught me a lot about love, I continued. They taught me that marriage is work, that it requires honesty, trust, and respect. That when you make vows to someone, those vows mean something. They're not just pretty words you say in front of a crowd. They're promises, sacred ones. More nods. My mother was crying happy tears. My father looked solemn and proud. "And I've tried to live by those lessons," I said. "I've tried to be the kind of wife my mother was, patient, loyal, forgiving. I've tried to be the kind of sister my parents raised me to be, protective, supportive, loving." I paused, letting the words settle. The room was absolutely silent now, everyone hanging on each word. "But here's what I've learned," I said, and my voice changed. Not much. Just enough that people started to shift in their seats, sensing something different in the air. I've learned that not everyone values those things the way we do. I've learned that some people will take your loyalty and your love and your forgiveness and they'll use them against you. They'll see your goodness as weakness, your trust as stupidity. My mother's smile had frozen. My father leaned forward slightly, confused. "I've learned," I continued, my eyes finding Marcus in the crowd, "that the person you marry, the person who promises to love and cherish you, to forsake all others, might not mean it. They might just be saying what they think you want to hear. And I've learned that the people you're supposed to trust most in the world, your family, might be the ones who betray you in the worst ways possible." The room was deathly quiet now. I could feel the confusion, the discomfort, people exchanging glances, wondering what was happening. "So I want to take this moment," I said, "on this night celebrating my parents' beautiful, honest, faithful marriage, to share some truth. Because that's what tonight is about, right? Truth, commitment, seeing the people we love clearly." I pulled out my phone and pressed a button. Behind me, the projection screen, the one that was supposed to show family photos, flickered to life. "Marcus," I said, looking directly at my husband, "for the past 15 months, you've been having an affair. You've been lying to me, sleeping in our bed with me while sleeping in our bed with someone else. You've been stealing from our joint account to pay for hotels and gifts. You've been texting her while sitting next to me on the couch. You've been living a double life, and you've been remarkably good at it." Marcus had gone white. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. "And Lilith," I turned to my sister, who looked like she'd been turned to stone, "you've been sleeping with my husband, in my house, in my bed. You've been coming over while I'm at work, letting yourself in with the key he gave you, pretending to be my sister while actively destroying my marriage." Lilith's face had drained of color. She was shaking her head, but whether in denial or shock, I couldn't tell. The screen behind me began showing images. Not graphic ones, I wasn't cruel, but clear ones. Timestamp security footage of Lilith entering our house, screenshots of text messages between her and Marcus, bank records showing cash, withdrawals, photos of them together in public places, restaurants, parks, their body language unmistakably intimate. The gasps started rippling through the room. My mother made a sound like she'd been punched. My father stood up, his face red with fury or shock or both. For over a year, I said, my voice never wavering. I've known about this. I've watched you both. I've documented everything. I've waited because I wanted you to feel safe. I wanted you to think you'd gotten away with it. I wanted you to stand here tonight in front of everyone we know, everyone who matters, and pretend to care about love and loyalty and family. And then I wanted everyone to see exactly who you are. The slideshow continued. More images, more timestamps, more proof, undeniable and thorough. People were standing now, some covering their mouths, some staring at Marcus and Lilith with disgust, some looking at me with horror or pity or something like awe. So here's my toast, I said, raising my glass. To my parents, two people who actually meant their vows, two people who built something real and lasting and honest. May we all be lucky enough to find that kind of love, and may we be smart enough to recognize when we haven't. I drank. The glass was cold against my lips. The wine tasted like victory. And then I walked off that stage and out of that ballroom, my head high, my steps steady, leaving behind a room full of shock and silence and the ruins of two people who thought they could take everything from me without consequence. I made it to my car before the tears came. Not sad tears. I'd cried all of those out months ago, alone in hotel rooms and parked cars and the shower where no one could hear me. These were different. Relief, maybe, or release. The tears you cry when you've been holding your breath for so long that finally exhaling hurts. I sat in the parking lot for 10 minutes, watching people stream out of the country club. Some were leaving early, scandalized. Others were clustered in groups, talking frantically, looking back at the building like it might explode. I saw my father storm out, his face purple with rage, heading toward the parking lot, probably looking for Marcus. I saw my mother being held up by her sister, my Aunt Linda, both of them crying. I saw Marcus stumble out, his tie loose, his face ashen. He looked around wildly, and for a moment I thought he was looking for me, but no, he was looking for Lilith. She came out a minute later, still in that green dress, but now it looked all wrong. Her makeup was smeared, her hair disheveled. She'd been crying. People were staring at her, and she seemed to feel the weight of those stares because she kept her head down, moving fast toward her car. Marcus intercepted her, before she could get there. I was too far away to hear what they said, but I could see it. The frantic gestures. Marcus reaching for her, Lilith pulling away. The moment when whatever fragile fantasy they'd built together shattered completely. Because that's the thing about affairs. They exist in a bubble, protected by secrecy and fantasy and the thrill of getting away with something. But when you pop that bubble, when you drag it into the light and force it to exist in the real world with real consequences, it collapses. Every time. I watched Lilith shove Marcus away and get into her car. I watched her peel out of the parking lot, tires screeching. I watched Marcus stand there alone, his hands in his hair, looking lost. And then I started my car and drove away. I didn't go home. I went to my new apartment, the one I'd signed the lease for 2 months ago. 1 bedroom in a beautiful pre-war building downtown. Hardwood floors and high ceilings and windows that overlook the city. I'd already moved most of my important things there over the past few weeks. Clothes, documents, jewelry, a few pieces of furniture Marcus wouldn't notice were missing. I let myself in, kicked off my heels, and stood in the quiet for a long moment. My phone was ringing. I'd turned off the sound, but I could see it lighting up on the counter. 15 missed calls, 20 texts, voicemails piling up. I ignored all of it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of wine, drew a bath, and finally let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The rage, the grief, the betrayal, but also something else, something fierce and bright and satisfied. I'd done it. I'd exposed them. I'd made sure everyone knew the truth. And I'd done it in a way they'd never forget, never live down, never be able to spin or excuse. Perfect revenge isn't about getting even. It's about making sure the people who hurt you have to live with the consequences of their actions in a way that fundamentally changes their lives. And I'd done exactly that. The texts started getting more desperate around midnight. Marcus, please, we need to talk. I can explain. Marcus, where are you? I'm at the house. Your stuff is gone. Marcus, Sarah, I'm so sorry. Please just let me explain. Marcus, I love you. I made a mistake. Please. Lilith's texts were different. Lilith, I can't believe you did that. How could you? Lilith, you humiliated me. You humiliated our entire family. Lilith, Mom is devastated. Dad won't even look at me. I hope you're happy. I read them all with clinical interest. No remorse from Lilith, I noticed. No apology, just anger that she'd been caught, that I'd had the audacity to fight back. My mother called at 1 a.m. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Sarah, her voice was hoarse from crying. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm safe, Mom, I said. I'm at my new apartment. New apartment? She sounded confused. When did you? 2 months ago. I've been planning this for a while. There was a long silence. Then, I can't believe you knew. All this time, you knew, and you didn't say anything. What would you have done if I told you? I asked. Would you have believed me? Or would you have made excuses for Lilith, like you always do? That's not fair, isn't it? I kept my voice gentle, not accusatory, just honest. Mom, Lilith has been your favorite since the day she was born. I've watched you excuse her behavior my entire life. If I'd come to you privately and told you she was sleeping with Marcus, you would have found a way to make it my fault. Or you would have asked me to forgive her, to keep it quiet, to protect the family. Sarah. So I didn't tell you. I gathered proof. I waited, and I made sure that when the truth came out, it was undeniable, so that for once, just once, Lilith would have to face actual consequences for her actions. My mother was crying. I could hear it in her breathing. Your father's anniversary party is ruined. All those people. I'm sorry about that, I said, and I meant it. I really am. I wish there had been another way, but there wasn't. They weren't going to stop. Marcus wasn't going to leave me, and Lilith wasn't going to back off. They were perfectly happy to keep lying to me forever, so I had to make them stop. I don't know what to say to you right now. You don't have to say anything, Mom. I just need you to know that I'm okay, I'm safe, and I did what I had to do. I hung up before she could respond. It hurt, but it was necessary. My mother and I would have to find our way back to each other eventually, but right now she needed to sit with the truth of what her golden child had done. Sunday morning, Patricia filed the divorce papers. By noon, Marcus had been served. He called me immediately, and this time I answered. Sarah, please, he said, his voice desperate. Don't do this. We can work through this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever it takes. Just don't throw away 5 years of marriage. I'm not throwing it away, I said calmly. You did that when you decided to sleep with my sister. I'm just making it official. I made a mistake. People make mistakes. You've made mistakes too. Don't, I cut him off. Don't you dare try to both sides this. I've been a perfect wife to you. I've been loyal and patient and supportive, and you repaid me by fucking my sister in our bed. So no, Marcus, we're done. What about everything we built together? The house, the life? Read the divorce papers, I said. My lawyer will be in touch. He started to say something else, but I hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear or sadness, but from adrenaline. I'd finally said it. After over a year of pretending, I'd finally told him exactly what I thought of him. It felt incredible. The next few weeks were chaos. Beautiful, vindictive chaos. Marcus tried to fight the divorce, but he had no ground to stand on. Patricia had made sure of that. The evidence was overwhelming. The affair, the financial infidelity, everything. His lawyer took one look at what we had and advised him to settle. He moved out of our house within a week. I let him take his clothes and his personal items, but everything else stayed. The furniture we'd picked out together, the kitchen appliances, the art on the walls, all of it was mine now. He'd have to start over from scratch, just like I was doing emotionally. The house itself went on the market. Even with the memories tainted, it was a valuable asset, and I wasn't about to let him keep any part of it. We sold it within a month. Housing market was good, and I walked away with significantly more than half after Patricia worked her magic. Lilith, meanwhile, was spiraling. I heard about it through family members who still spoke to me. She'd lost her teaching position at the community center. Parents didn't want their children learning from someone with such a public scandal. She'd tried to move back in with our parents, but my father had refused. Not while she's unrepentant, he'd told my Aunt Linda, who'd told me. Because that was the thing. Lilith still didn't think she'd done anything wrong. In her mind, she'd fallen in love, and love justified everything. The fact that the love was with her sister's husband didn't seem to register as particularly problematic to her. She and Marcus tried to make a go of it, actually. I found this out from mutual friends who were scandalized but also morbidly fascinated. They lasted 6 weeks. Turns out when you build a relationship on betrayal and secrecy, and then suddenly that relationship has to exist in the real world where everyone knows what you did and judges you for it, the relationship doesn't survive. Who knew? Marcus wanted to make it work. He'd blown up his marriage, his reputation, his relationship with his in-laws. He needed it to mean something. He needed to believe he'd thrown everything away for true love, not just for sex and ego. But Lilith? Lilith had never wanted the reality of Marcus. She'd wanted the fantasy, the forbidden thrill, the victory of taking something that belonged to me. Once it wasn't forbidden anymore, once she'd actually won, the appeal evaporated. She dumped him via text, from what I heard. Moved to Portland without telling him, blocked his number, started posting Instagram photos of herself looking free, and finding herself again. Marcus, according to friends who ran into him, looked like hell. He'd lost weight, stopped shaving regularly, moved into a depressing apartment on the wrong side of town. His job was safe, he was good at what he did, and his company didn't care about his personal life. But his social life was destroyed. Mutual friends had to pick sides, and most of them picked mine. I didn't feel bad for him, not even a little bit. My relationship with my family was more complicated. My father came around first. He showed up at my apartment 3 weeks after the Eve party, looking older than I had ever seen him. We sat on my couch and he said, "I'm sorry." "For what?" I asked. "For not seeing it sooner, for not protecting you, for creating an environment where Lilith thought she could do something like that without consequences." "Dad, no, let me finish." He took a shaky breath. "Your mother and I, we always knew we favored Lilith. We told ourselves it was because she needed more support, more guidance. You were so self-sufficient, so capable. We thought you'd be fine on your own, but that wasn't fair to you, and it created a monster." It was the most honest conversation I'd ever had with my father. We both cried. He asked if he could still be part of my life, and I said yes, of course, he was my dad, but things would be different now. I wouldn't accept being second best anymore. I wouldn't swallow my hurt to keep the peace. He understood, or at least he said he did. My mother took longer. She was still processing her own grief. The ruined party, the shattered family, the daughter she thought she knew turning out to be someone else entirely. We didn't speak for 2 months. When she finally reached out, it was with a letter. A real, handwritten letter that showed up at my apartment one October morning. In it, she apologized. Not for Lilith. She couldn't control Lilith's actions. But for the environment she'd created. For making Lilith think she could get away with anything. For making me feel like I had to be perfect and uncomplaining to earn love. For not seeing how much pain I was in, even as I stood in front of her giving that speech. "I keep thinking about how strong you had to be," she wrote. "To know for over a year, to gather evidence, to plan everything, all while pretending to be okay. That's not strength a daughter should need. That's survival. And I'm sorry you had to survive in your own family." I cried reading that letter. Not pretty crying, ugly, snotty, gasping sobs that came from somewhere deep and old and hurt. But they were healing tears. Finally. As for me, I threw myself into rebuilding. I went to therapy, a lot of therapy. I needed to process not just the betrayal, but the year of deception, the rage I'd carried, the cold calculation I'd employed. Dr. Morrison, my therapist, said I was one of the most emotionally controlled people she'd ever worked with. That's not always a compliment, she'd added gently. She was right. I'd spent so long in survival mode, in planning mode, that I'd forgotten how to just feel things in real time. I'd learned to compartmentalize so well that I'd compartmentalized everything, even the good stuff. So I worked on that, on being present, on letting myself be messy and uncertain and vulnerable. I also started dating again, eventually. Nothing serious at first. Just coffee dates and dinners. Remembering what it felt like to have someone interested in me, to laugh at someone's jokes, to feel that flutter of attraction without the weight of betrayal hanging over it. One guy, David, stuck around longer than the others. He was a pediatrician, kind and funny, and completely unaware of my drama. He'd just moved to the city when we met. When I eventually told him my story, about 6 months in, he was quiet for a long time. "That's some Count of Monte Cristo level revenge," he finally said. "I prefer to think of it as justice," I replied. "Sure, justice," he grinned. "Remind me never to piss you off." We've been together for 8 months now. It's not perfect. I'm still learning how to trust, how to be open, how to believe that not everyone is lying to me. But it's good. Really good. And for the first time in years, I feel like I'm building something real. I ran into Lilith once, about a year and a half after the party. It was at a coffee shop downtown, completely by accident. She was ahead of me in line, and when she turned with her latte, she nearly walked right into me. We both froze. She looked different. Older, maybe, or just worn down. The bright confidence she used to carry everywhere was gone, replaced by something more subdued. She'd cut her hair short. It didn't suit her. "Sarah," she said, and her voice cracked slightly. "Lilith!" We stood there in this awkward tableau, both of us aware that everyone in the coffee shop was now watching us, probably recognizing us, definitely waiting to see what would happen. She started, then stopped, tried again. "I'm sorry, for what it's worth. I know it's not worth much, but I am. Sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. The sister I'd loved my whole life. The sister I'd protected and defended and supported, even when she didn't deserve it. The sister who'd smiled at me from my marriage bed. "Okay," I said. "Okay." She looked confused. "That's it? What else do you want me to say, Lilith? That I forgive you? I don't. That I understand? I don't. That we can be sisters again someday? We can't. You made your choice, I made mine, and now we both have to live with the consequences." Her eyes filled with tears. "I lost everything. My family, my friends, my job. I lost everything because of one mistake." "It wasn't one mistake," I said quietly. "It was hundreds of them. Every time you came to my house, every time you texted him, every time you lied to my face. Those were all choices, Lilith. And you made them knowing exactly what you were doing." "I didn't mean to hurt you." "Yes, you did." I kept my voice calm, factual. "Maybe you didn't think of it that way. Maybe in your head, you were just following your heart or living your truth or whatever you told yourself, but you knew it would hurt me. You knew it was wrong, and you did it anyway. For over a year. So no, I don't accept your apology. Because I don't think you're actually sorry for what you did. I think you're sorry you got caught." I walked past her, got my coffee, and left without looking back. My hands were shaking, but my heart was steady. I'd said what I needed to say, and I'd walked away with my head high. That's the thing about revenge like this. It's not just about the big dramatic moment. It's about every moment after, every time you get to walk away with dignity, every time you get to say no, I don't forgive you, and I don't have to. It's been 3 years now since that party. 3 years since I stood on that stage and burned my old life to the ground. People sometimes ask me if I regret it, if I wish I'd handled things differently. If I think the revenge was too harsh, too public, too calculated, the answer is no. Because here's what that revenge gave me. It gave me my power back. For over a year, Marcus and Lilith had held all the cards. They knew the truth, and I didn't. They were making choices about my life without my knowledge or consent. They were stealing my agency, my ability to make informed decisions about my own future. The moment I discovered them, I could have ended it immediately. Filed for divorce, moved out, cut ties. But that would have been a reaction. That would have been me letting them dictate the terms, even in ending it. Instead, I took back control. I decided when and how and where my marriage would end. I decided who would know and what they would know. I decided what justice looked like for me. And yes, it was calculated. Yes, it was cold. Yes, I played a role for over a year, lying to them the way they'd lied to me. But I'm not sorry. Not for a second, because they forced me to become someone else. The Sarah I was before, trusting, forgiving, willing to believe the best in people. that Sarah would have been destroyed by their betrayal. She would have crumbled and blamed herself and spent years in therapy trying to figure out what she did wrong. But the Sarah I became, the one who could wait and plan and execute perfect revenge, she's stronger, smarter, less naive. She knows that sometimes the people you love will hurt you in ways you never imagined, and she knows that you don't have to take it lying down. That's what the revenge was really about, not hurting them. Though that was a nice bonus. It was about refusing to be a victim. It was about saying, you don't get to do this to me without consequences. You don't get to take my love and loyalty and trust and use them against me. You don't get to win. And they didn't win. I did. My life now is quieter than it used to be. Simpler. I have a smaller circle of friends, but they're real ones. People who've proven themselves, who've stuck by me through the aftermath. I have a relationship with my father that's more honest than it's ever been. My mother and I are still finding our way back to each other, but we're trying. That's something. I have David, who makes me laugh and challenges me to be less guarded, who knows my worst moments and loves me anyway. I have my career. I was promoted to head nurse last year, and I'm good at my job. Really good. Turns out the skills you develop while planning elaborate revenge, attention to detail, strategic thinking, emotional control, translate well into hospital administration. And I have peace, real peace, not the false kind I had when I was married to Marcus, the kind that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of, the kind that comes from refusing to accept less than you deserve. 3 years ago, I caught my husband in our bed with my sister. And yes, my revenge took 3 years when you count the preparation and the aftermath. But it was perfect, not because it destroyed them, though it did. Not because it was dramatic, though it was, but because it transformed me from a woman who'd been betrayed into a woman who refused to stay betrayed. From a victim into someone who fought back with intelligence and precision and patience. I wouldn't wish what happened to me on anyone. The pain of that betrayal, the coldness required to plan what I planned, the loneliness of carrying that secret for over a year, it nearly broke me, but it didn't. And on the other side of it, I found myself, the real me, not the perfect daughter or the good wife or the responsible sister, just Sarah, flawed and fierce and finally free. So yes, my revenge was perfect because it gave me back the one thing they tried to take, myself.